Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar where we're gonna walk you through CentralConnect, our new integration platform for head office applications. I'm Dadi Karason, Chief Technology Officer at LS Retail, and with me here is Saevar Jonasson. He's the solution architect for this product. And Wata Laham might join us as well. He's the VP for sales in Middle East, Africa, and India. But let's just dive in and let's try to formulate what it is that we want to talk about. Now, the challenge that we have is that many of our customers have a considerable investment in third-party head office applications, which they want to retain. Many of these solutions are built to handle either a very high number of users or a very high number of transactions, sometimes operating in many different countries. They still have the need for a modern retail solution, something like LS Central that can handle all of your retail operation needs and also hospitality operational needs if you're running restaurants. Now, traditionally, building an integration between two head office applications or head office and application and LS Central tends to take a considerable amount of time and effort. And this is why we don't see a lot of sort of standardized applications that have done this in the past. But that's what we want to do. We want to standardize the approach and provide an integration framework that can connect LS Central to these head office platforms in an easier way. So to summarize, the head office platform will then continue to run processes like finance, warehousing, distribution, and so on. But LS Central will take on the responsibility of running the front end and back office for the retail and hospitality parts. So LS Central, we can use that to manage the retail stores, the restaurants, pharmacies, hotels, gas stations from front to back, using an integrated POS that talks directly to financials in PC, has an inventory module, e-commerce module, and so forth. And CentralConnect is a package framework that manages the integration of LS Central to third-party head office applications such as Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, SAP 4, HANA, Aptos 1, and Oracle, just to name a few. So it would basically look like this. We have an head office application running, for example, warehousing and finance. And this is based on maybe SAP HANA or F&O from Dynamics. And then we use LS Central as a retail back office solution, which receives the master data from the third-party platform. We use LS Central to manage configurations of the setup of the application. This is where we manage promotions, permissions, do inventory, and etc. And we also use the POS for front-end operations, both for retail and hospitality. This, of course, integrates with LS Pay. Our payment solution and all of this is available in around 157 countries and 23 industry verticals. Now, a little bit about LS Central. If you're not familiar with LS Central is a retail and hospitality application that's built on top of Dynamics Business Central. This is how we leverage the investment in the Microsoft Dynamics 365 ecosystem. There are more than 40,000 businesses worldwide that use Business Central as their ERP. And LS Central has been recognized by Gartner as one of the leading vendors in the digital POS applications. LS Retail has also been named as one of the 10 largest point of sales software suppliers in the world. So it's safe to say that we have a unique value proposition in this space. So our value proposition has been for quite some time now that this is a global POS solution that the LS Central point of sale has a unique market advantage in that sense. We have a global presence that is basically unmatched by our competitors. And this global footprint makes LS Retail the ideal provider for retailers who want to work with the same solution in all the regions and countries where they operate. Now, if you look at the competition, some of our competitors have good coverage in multiple regions with maybe one or two verticals. Other competitors have good coverage in many verticals, but in only a handful of regions. But the LS Retail approach gives us a unique coverage in the 23 verticals I mentioned before, in multiple countries as well. So this is why we've said our strength is that we can operate as a global POS solution. And if we look at what are the building blocks of LS Central, both the POS and back office. If we start from the right, then of course we have rich retail functionality. We have a built-in point of sale. We have self-service checkouts. There is a rich e-commerce integration both with Shopify and Adobe Commerce. And we have all of these basic processes like online orders, click and collect, store transfers, and so on. On the food and beverage side, we have self-ordering kiosks, ingredient and management, and ingredient costing, just to name a few. Now, if we move to the head office platforms, you can see some of the items here. We've made them bold because these are some of the processes that could potentially be migrated from LS Central to some of the other third-party head office platforms like SAP HANA, Dynamics F&O, or Oracle. And just to go through them one by one, warehouse management, supplier management, inventory management, analytics and reporting, as well as replenishment. So again, in these scenarios, there is no black and white. There is nothing that says that you have to run replenishment on, for example, SAP HANA. But we just want to make sure that you have the possibility of doing so if you wish. So same with the other processes. I mean, if you're happy with the warehouse management in BC, but want to run your financials in Dynamics 365 F&O, we're giving you the opportunity to do that. So it's a bit of a mix and match. You can pick some of the workloads or processes and run them on the third-party solution, and others where you're happy with them being run on LS Central and Business Central, you just keep them there. Now, integrating or using LS Central for these third-party ERP systems brings a number of advantages as well. You get access to LS Pay. This is our payment service platform integration product that has over 65 payment integrations in over 50 countries already. And this is built into the LS Central POS and will be available soon in the Business Central back office as well. This basically means that all of your payment processing is going through the same API and is basically integrated into the core product. We also have a loyalty app that allows you to shop in store. Basically, we call this Scan Pay Go for LS Central. This is an application that runs on the customer's device, and you can use that to either enable them to run a loyalty program on a smartphone and also to enable the customers to do shopping and payment processing on their own smartphone device. Last but not least, our e-commerce for LS Central is quite attractive for some of the vendors because we have an out-of-the-box integration to Adobe Commerce and as well as Shopify and as well Google Local Inventory. And this is the unified commerce approach where you are running basically items, prices, discount, basket calculation, loyalty point collection, click and collect management, as well as the transaction repository, all from the same platform. But enough about this, and let's switch to LS CentralConnect and see, what are the capabilities that we're building on in this case. So we're using Azure Storage in the first round, and this is where we're storing the data packages that we are exchanging between the third-party head office and LS Central. We are using web services for data transfers. At the moment, we're using XML-based transfers, but more on that later. because we're not married to the XML-based format. It's just that the products that we've been working with so far have been XML-based, so it made a lot of sense to start there. We're making full use of the Azure environmental security features, as well as integration logs for traceability. And the CentralConnect product is built on the Microsoft Dynamics Business Central extensibility framework, which means that this can be both customized and extended by partners. I'm assuming that most of you here on this call are familiar with the capabilities of the extensibility framework and how that allows you to make customizations that are sustainable and non-invasive and can be easily upgraded between different versions. Now, how does the data flow work in this example? So keep in mind here we've just extracted one of the data flows we're working with, and this is from Dynamics 365 F&O to LS Central. So in our case, we start from the left where we have the F&O data management framework. In our case, we have an Azure function that triggers the export of master data from F&O. And in our case, master data is usually something like product information, prices, vendors, anything that you want to maintain in the third-party head office database. Now, this triggers the export, which means that an XML document is inserted into the Azure Storage account. There we do a little bit of processing, and we put not the package, we put a message on a message queue that says, hey, there's a new package that you need to process. BC is monitoring the message queue, pops out the message, processes the data packets, imports the data into LS Central. There's a bunch of validation and cleanup staging, before we insert it into the actual live database. And it's important to keep in mind that even if we are listing this up as a data flow that's specific to finance and operations, we really don't care where the data is coming from. If you can give us an XML document in Azure Storage, then we are fine with it. So even if this is based on Dynamics F&O, any ERP platform that can access Azure and work with XML documents, we're just happy to receive the data from it. There's some limitations in this case. We would like the files to be flat and not a lot of nesting in it, because it makes it much easier to parse them. But that's about it. And if we look at the other scenario, how data would flow from LS Central into our case as well, again F&O. At the end of day, when you post a statement in DC, we create a data package which is stored in Azure Storage. We have an Azure function that triggers the import of the data into the data management framework in F&O. And there we have some processing to take the data that was a part of this package, enter that into a sales order that can be posted either automatically or manually, as based on the customer's preferences. So really simple. Just a few assumptions that we are making here, and probably the biggest one is inventory management, because inventory management in our case, we're just assuming that everything related to inventory is managed in LS Central. Obviously, we have had a couple of cases where this is not the case, where customers said, well, some of the inventory management should be done in either SAP or Dynamics F&O, but it's impossible to build this kind of capabilities from scratch out of the box. So we're just saying in our scenario, we're assuming that everything related to inventory, receiving, transfers, stock counts, positive and negative adjustments, this is done in LS Central. And if you need to send an inventory synchronization back at the end of the day, you do that at the end of the day, but you're not sort of mixing web service lookups for inventory in different locations between the two platforms, unless you have a very good idea what it is that you're trying to achieve. Now, just a few requirements here. Um, we are requiring in this round that data needs to be written and read from Azure Storage. I mean, we're quite open to other possibilities as well. If you're using, for example, something from AWS or some other cloud platforms like Google, that's something we can look into. But at the moment, we're just using Azure because it's fairly easy to work with that from PC. The current format, as I said, is XML, but there is nothing in there that says that this cannot be JSON or CSV or something else. And in these scenarios that we've been showing so far, we are using web services to trigger the import and export data. This is because FNO has a very good web service support. It's not that it's not that different from PC. So it's fairly easy for us to trigger both the import and the export of data just by calling a web service. But if you don't have a web service capable platform, we're fine with you just running a scheduled job that gives us, product updates, once a day or once an hour. There's nothing, nothing that says that approach isn't good. But enough talking. I'm gonna hand this over to my colleague Saevar, who's gonna walk you through a couple of scenarios. First of all, how we, access the data or read master data from Dynamics FNO and read that into the Business Central database, do a few sales, and then return the data back, and also see how we would do something similar based on the XML file format that we are receiving from SAP for HANA. So, Saevar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dadi. In today's demo, I have two scenarios that I would like to walk you through. So the first scenario is to review the configuration for the CentralConnect. So what Azure components we need to set up, and next we will go through the data mapping and how to create it for vendors from FNO to LS Central. We're going to change a vendor in FNO, run the data export import process, and finally review the changes in Business Central. And before we check the configuration, I would like to show you here on the top, we have two tabs open. On the left side, we have the Business Central client, and on the right side, we have the Finance and Operation client. Now let's jump into the configuration page. Connect config. In here we have the general section, where we set up the Azure application, client ID and secret and tenant ID and the scope. In the import section, we have specified the Azure function URL and the storage URL for the message queue. In the export section, we have the export storage, external storage URL, and finally we have the export messages, which is the function for exporting messages. Now, if we take a look at the data mapping, and we are going to change the data mapping for the vendors. So in here, CentralConnect data mapping. Just to explain this page a bit, we have the available entity selection, which is the referring the entity name of the external system. And in our case here, most of the entities here are from FNO, and then we have one entity from SAP. And the entities are based on XML, and here we can see an example of XML from SAP and XML from FNO. And we can see it's totally different setup of the XML, but the logic behind does understand both of those and is generic enough to understand other layouts also. But let's dive into the data mapping. So we go into view mapping, and here we have two choices. We can either manually create the data mapping by inserting the table ID, the field ID, and the external field name, which is referring the XML element that comes from the external ERP system. But we also created an import XML schema, which is basically taking the XML schema that we get from the external system, and we can process it, and when we close it, we will get the fields that are within the schema we provided. And in our case, we just keep it simple and keep few fields, since I don't want to have it too complicated. In the LS Central table ID, I just need to provide the table ID and the field ID, and if it's a primary field. So vendor account number would go into field ID 1 in this case. And here, same for here. And finally the address city. And now the data mapping is ready. And if we head back and take a look at the vendors before we start changing in F&O. We have the Datum Corporation here. And if we go into all vendors in F&O, and we change it a bit, change some attributes here, just to change some, save it, and go back. Now the Azure function is looking for new changes. It runs on a schedule and checks if we have some new packages. And once new package is created, the data is both sent to the Azure storage, and the message is created. And that's the next thing we will take a look at. CentralConnect import list. So we have an Azure queue, message queue, that is storing all of the related information for the storage. So what we are doing here, we have both process message and import message. What process message does is that it will process the selected container ID, and import messages, it will import the messages that have been created in the message queue, and once it's in here, it gets deleted from the service bus message queue. And let's check if it's over yet. It is executing at the moment. Okay, and if we import the message, now we have a new message here, and now we can process the message. Once we have processed the message, the data are fetched to the Azure storage and inserted into the CentralConnect staging table. In here we have the field value and the data mapping, and we can validate the data. It's a basic validation, and finally we can insert the validated data. And once it's inserted, it clears out and should be ready. So if we head back into the vendor, Datum Corp, and it is the same. So that looks good. A basic example of how this works. So now to take a look at the second scenario, where we want to change an item in F&O. We want to run the data import export process and review the changes in Business Central, sell a transaction on POS using the changed item, run a statement posting process, and finally run the data import export process to import the sales data into F&O, and finally create a sales order and review in F&O. So we want to start by, maybe best to look at the item first. Items. So we are going to change this item that is already in the Business Central, and we want to do that by going here, just somewhere we have the item, and now we are in the Finance and Operation client. The item number here, let's say we want to change the, here it is, the unit, sales unit to EA and the base price to $89.99. Save it. Now we just need to wait a bit while it's running or executing. So going back into the CentralConnect import list, and just maybe to review the CentralConnect data mapping. For the products, I am using this entity here, and in our case we just have simple data mapping. We don't have nearly all of the items, but are the XML attributes, but at least enough for a show and a demo. I mean, okay. Now if we take a look at the import and check if it has been imported. No, not yet. It's still executing, it seems. Okay, and import messages. Now we have the released products. Now we go ahead and process the message. We go into the staging table and validate the data and insert the validated data and head back into items and check the price is now $89.99, and where was the sales unit measure is now EA or EATS. So now we can go in and run the POS. We log on, find the item, sell it, log off, and finally we go in the statements, open the statement list, we create a new one, calculate the statement, 49, and post the statement. And now what's happening is that the Azure function takes the document and creates a data package for F&O. So it zips the file and create the manifest document and store it in Azure, and finally it will import it in F&O. So if we head back into the Finance and Operation client, go into the System Administration and Data Management, we can see 526. We have a new data project imported, and we have the sales order header and sales order line. So we can go ahead and import the data, and now it runs through all of the validations that happens in F&O, and once that's done we can check the sales order. And usually this takes a few seconds, or if it's large, it could take some time, but this is a small example, so it shouldn't take that long. So it's executing, total 1 record in each. And now it succeeded. So we can go in the accounts receivable, all sales orders, and here we have the S121, and review the order. So we have the item and the default retail customer that is set up, so everything looks good. And of course, if we have multiple sales orders, all normal sales will be aggregated into one sales order, and all transactions or sales in BC that are known customers, they will get a separate sales order. But yeah, that concludes my demo. So thank you.
We know that there are some people on the call who are not associated with LS Retail Partners. But if you're interested in taking a look at what LS Central can offer you, then please contact Wada. Wada is our VP for Middle East, India, Africa, and he will be the commercial lead for this project. His email is here, wada@LS Retail. So if you have any questions regarding the commercial side, then don't hesitate to reach out. Again, we'll be sharing the recording later today. We will also share a PDF of the slides. In that PDF, you can find the contact information. Suggest that you reach out to Wada regarding the commercials. He is our commercial lead in that project. If not, you can, maybe drop a mail to me and Saevar, and we'll try to answer to the best of our abilities. So thank you all for attending, and have a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.